Hi, you're listening to Kate Palmer, and in this clip I'm going to be showing you how I embellished and finished off my Copic Journal cover. So this is part 2 of 3 of my steampunk inspired Copic Journal. I hope you enjoy it. I've started with 9 of these little chipboard squares. What I've then done is just either dab or sort of stroke the acrylic paint across the surface. This is the white snow cup and it's the Adirondack dabber from Ranger. I'm just going to let these dry, and then what I'll be doing is adding some of the Carpathian Bluebells Starburst Stains just to the front of all of these. Now the reason I've put the dabber on first is the chipboard will change the colour. So you can see on the ones where I've actually added less of the paint, the chipboard actually shows through underneath and changes to blue. On 3 of the squares I've applied quite a lot of the white paint. On 3 I've applied very little, and on the other 3 I've applied it in patches. Now I'm just going to leave these to dry. So what I've done is I'm using a gorgeous splatter stamp from Tim Holtz and this beautiful edging stamp from the Tim Holtz Visual Artistry collection. It's from the Flights of Fancy acrylic stamp sheet. I'm also using Brilliance ink in Coffee Bean and the acrylic dabber in gold. So I've applied the acrylic dabber directly to the stamp front here, and then I've stamped this over these 3 little tiles. And then I've gone and used the Coffee Bean ink on here, and I've stamped this over the edges of the individual tiles, so you just get a little peak of brown. I left some tiles undecorated just so that there's a bit of variation for the backgrounds. Next, use Rub and Buff to decorate some of the vintage text. I don't want to waste this, so I'm just using all of this excess to highlight some bits of vintage text. Might be able to use this later. I've ended up using the Rub and Buff on the edge of several pieces of vintage text, plus the edges of several of those chipboard tiles, just to tie the whole thing together. Just leave that to dry. And go and wash it off your finger straight away because it's not very good for you. Once all of this is dry, I've glued some small pieces of the vintage text, plus a few of those stickers and vintage images onto the tiles. I've then covered them with glossy accents. I have to say I love how this has turned out. I hope you do as well. I think part of what I like so much is that quite a few of the embellished images are actually photos of my grandfather. This is him as a little boy, as a man entering service, and down here a little bit older, and I just love this one. Now that I've showed you how I've made the backgrounds here, I'm just going to give you a closer look so that you can see each of these embellished pieces. To start with, I had some of these gorgeous, I think it's called Pearls and Crystals from Prima. Now it didn't come this blue colour. I've used Copic markers to colour this in. And if I get it really closely, you can see the background colour there. Let's start with what I've done to the base first. Alright, so if you've watched my first clip, you saw how I made this beautiful chocolate covered journal and then added the texture paste and the markers. So what I've done, just for a little bit more interest on this, is I've used some of the design adhesives from ClearSnap, and they're, I suppose, little adhesive images that you peel off the backing paper, stick onto your project. There's another bit of it over here, and then you can add foil or flocking or anything that you can get to stick to it. So I've added these randomly over the background and just popped on some gold foil. I've added these cute little gold book corners. I've covered this chipboard word, love, with the Lindy Stamp Gang embossing powder, Caesar's Gold, and I've just got a few more of those little swirls and pearls down here to accentuate the bottom half. The next thing I've done, this is just a bandage that I bought from the chemist. It's cotton and fairly open weave. I've dyed this with the Carpathian Bluebell Starburst Stain. All I've done is pop it on a piece of paper, tap the Starburst Stain over the white bandage, leaving quite a lot of variation. So I've done some areas quite light and some quite dark. You can see here there's darker purple, paler blue. This is all just the one colour. And then I've let that dry. I've then used a little bit of glossy accents to adhere that to the journal cover. So not only does that keep it nice and stiff, it stops it from moving and wiggling about when you don't want it to. So that's what I've done as the base piece. And then I've gone and put all of my decorated inchies on the top. Now I've used chipboard for these because I know this is going to get a bit of a beating, probably quite a lot of use with my Copic stuff inside, and I've covered each of the pieces in either glossy accents or crackle accents, just so that they're nice and strong. On this particular tile I have a little book corner. It's one of the tiles with the blue background and the splatter paint stamp over it. I've used a little bit of crackle glossy accents down the sides here. And along the bottom. I've got little black pearls, but then I've put the crackle accents over the top. I have a little piece of the vintage book page. Some of these really cute little micro beads. And then I've used my Copic markers to highlight areas or accent areas of her dress. And then I've covered the whole panel with the glossy accents. So moving along to the next one, this is really cute. Now this didn't take any time at all. This was actually a fancy button off a pair of jeans that I used to have. So I've put a little bit of gold braid down the side here and accented with the crackle accents, just this top section. Now that top section is one of the plain Starburst Stain panels. This section down here, if you watched that first video, this was the piece of paper that I mixed up the perfect paper adhesive and the magical markers on. And I've just used this in the background because it's obviously so well matched with the rest of the colours. I've used one of these gorgeous little leaf chipboard pieces from Dusty Attic. Again, I've covered it in the embossing powder from Lindy's Stamp Gang, and you can find the colour of this, which was Caesar's Gold, on my blog post. And then I've just got a couple of little crystals down the side, which I've covered in the plain glossy accents, just so that they fade into the background a little. I've just embellished this with a couple of tiny little watch pieces down here. Now this was a vintage earring. I've just cut the shank off and used it here. So I've left this one with this little piece here loose so that it dangles. Again, I've got a mixture of the glossy accents on the main image and the crackle accents around the edge. And just because I like feeling connected to what I'm making, I've used images of my grandfather here. Now this is one of the little images of from the Tim Holtz set. I thought she was just incredibly cute, and one of the words from the Tim Holtz set. Now I've paired this with a little crown and a time sticker that I bought ages ago. I'm sorry, I don't remember the brand in the background. Moving right along, this is one of my favourite ones, which is why I used it as the centerpiece. Again, a beautiful image of a young woman, embellished with some more of those gold micro beads. Now I'm not quite sure what it actually is supposed to be for, but I've used it as a frame. It's this really cute, it's a tiny fine piece of wire attached to a little hanger at the top here, and it's just made the perfect circular frame for this image. Alright, so then what I've done is I've enhanced it with some micro beads, this little mini word, a bit more of that gold braid, and this was actually part of the pocket watch. Now, I've enhanced it with some little blue gems. Isn't that gorgeous? I just thought that I really added something to the whole piece. Little dragonfly in the corner. Now what I've done on this one is I've used the crackle accents all around the outside, and then in the inside of the frame I've used the very clear glossy accents, and I've managed to actually get this without any bubbles, which is pretty amazing for me. I really liked the way that one turned out. Now this next one here is my grandfather as a little boy. Isn't he a cutie? So you can see what I've done here. I've used some of these Making Memories metallic letter tiles on the side, which I've enhanced with some dabbers. Again, I've got the gold braid and the crackle accents over the top of the backgrounds that I've made. Now I've popped a few little wings on him. These are also coloured with Copic markers, as well as the accents on his outfit. I've popped the little word forever here. I edged this with Distress inks before mounting it. Then once I've added the glossy accents, you can see that because it was wet on wet, I did this while it was wet on purpose, the Distress inks stain the glossy accents a little. I thought that was a really fantastic effect. So this next piece, 12th of March 2011, the date that I get to take my very first Copic course. Again, a few more pieces of the watch piece. I've used some chipboard numbers here with a little bit of the black instant pearls. This is what it is. It's a black pearl pen from Viva, and you can use it to make little pearls of any size you like. Aren't they perfect? So it's sort of supposed to be self-leveling. The black works beautifully. And again, little dragonfly on the watch piece there. Now, for the last section, I love the way this turned out. This was again another one of those centerpieces from my grandfather's watch. And I've just paired that with some glossy accents that I've then distressed, which is what I've done over his face. So I've taken to it with a small wire and fiberglass brush. If you can actually see it close up, it's quite matte looking, very vintage, very frosted glass, and I just love it. And when you pair it with this steampunk effect around his eye from the watch piece, so you can actually see both of his eyes. And I've also used my Copics to colour this before I've then added the glossy accents. And because the Copics are alcohol-based and not water-based, they don't react with the glossy accents, so they don't bleed at all. It's a bit clearer. So it's got these teeny tiny little bubbles. I've heated it to get that effect. In general, you're not supposed to heat glossy accents, but if you really want this, I wanted a frosted vintage glass, so I needed a bit more texture in there. So I've heated it, got a whole bunch of little bubbles, and then, as I said, I've taken to it with a wire and fiberglass brush. Be very careful with the fiberglass brush. I managed to get a piece in my finger, which was not fun. I hope my journal cover's given you a few ideas. I really enjoyed working on this one. It was very personal and I had a great time making it. Thanks again for watching, and as always, you can find the full product listing on my blog.